Hey everyone, it's Darien. So welcome back, and I'm gonna be doing my March music favorites today. So I'm gonna be going over some tunes, some albums, and even some documentaries that I've been watching or have watched in the past month. I've definitely had a lot of downtime for that with everything that's going on in the world right now. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment, whatever I'm supposed to tell you to do. And we're just gonna get into it. So last time I talked more about R&B and soul music, so this time I'm gonna kick off the review section of this video with the pop country album, and that is Kelsea by Kelsea Ballerini. So this is her third album, and I've actually known about her and her music since her first album. Which came out around 2015, which is called The First Time. And so far, this is definitely my favorite album she's put out. That I find her a lot more introspective and unapologetically, which is interesting because her sophomore album was actually called Unapologetically, but I think she comes off a lot more natural on this album and a lot more specific with her lyricism, since she talks a lot about anxiety, the pressures of being perfect, and the pressures of like needing to fit in the celebrity world, or more specifically in Nashville, since she is like a pop country singer. So there's a side of her that's like definitely strays from the typical Nashville, or at least the part of Nashville that revolves around country music, the typical like country music sound. That when she first came out on country radio, her sound was definitely a lot more pop than people were used to, I believe. I also really like that she focused on these more introspective topics, because I feel like it's very common for pop country female singers to focus mainly on relationships, like in the past with Taylor Swift, Shania Twain. And I don't think there's anything bad about it, but because there's already enough females who have done this before, I think it was a good idea for Kelsea to focus on more herself on this album than just relationships, although some of the songs do go into that. She's also very tongue-in-cheek on this album, which I feel makes her more relatable. That it reminds me of her debut album, where she did this a lot on songs like Dibs and I think Love Me Like You Mean It. And I really feel like she pulls off this comedic style of singing, writing very effectively. So an example of one of these songs on the Kelsea album is Hole in a Bottle. It's this playful song about this girl who's drinking and the wine just magically keeps disappearing from the bottle because there's a hole in the bottle. Obviously, that's why. So for example, the chorus opens like, "There's a hole in the bottle, leaking out this wine. It's already empty, it ain't even supper time." So it's kind of her just being like, oh wow, all the wine's gone, but that wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. That it reminds me of like when a dog gets caught doing something it's not supposed to, and it'll just look around like, oh, that wasn't me. I don't know why you're looking at me. Like just playing the victim almost, but in like a funny way. That I think it's also important to appreciate upbeat songs that have that are just very clever, because I think anyone can write like just like a fun upbeat song. But I think what really makes this one stand out is how clever it's written, or how clever the lyrics are. So she mentioned in a live stream recently that I think it was when she did for her album release, since everything was on lockdown by the time her album came out. And she talked about how the opening and closing tracks on all her albums are very strategically placed. And on this album, it's Overshare and LA. So Overshare is another one of the like comedic tongue-in-cheek songs on this album. So I thought it was a perfect way to open it up. And pretty much it talks about this anxiety she has with silence when she's talking or having a conversation with other people, even if they're on a first name basis, like she says in the song. And so she tends to talk too much and overshare and just give away too much about herself to people who might not know her all that well. Like I mentioned earlier, anxiety and the idea of being insecure are major themes on this album, making it a really great way to kick off the album as well. And then LA, the last track, is a song she wrote by herself about kind of like this tug and war she has like with LA, that I think it might also tie into the fact that she's like pop country. So like country, Tennessee, pop, definitely associated with LA. But more importantly, the song talks about like her insecurities with fitting in with the LA scene or LA celebrities. So she talks about if she's going to go to a party, if she's going to fit in there, if she calls one of her famous friends, if they're going to call her back. So it's a really cool way for the listener to get a taste of like the not so pretty side of LA, I guess, since it does seem to be a place that causes her a lot of anxiety and insecurities. That one parallel I found with this song and the opening song, that in Overshare she mentions a story where she made a fool of herself at some party with a celebrity. And then in LA, it talks about like the idea of like, is she gonna fit in or not with these LA celebrities and the LA like celebrity music scene. I don't know if this is what she intended, but to me it's interesting how she goes to having this one like bad experience with a celebrity to like suddenly being able to dip her toes into the LA celebrity singer scene. One of my favorite songs on this album is Homecoming Queen, which is also the lead single for Kelsea, and it's one of the most stripped down country tracks on this album. And the idea of the homecoming queen on this song is actually a metaphor for someone, or a girl specifically, who everyone sees as like this perfect queen. That queen's also a term that gets thrown around on social media a lot with the glorification of celebrities and famous artists. But deep down, this girl's actually very insecure and has a lot of self-doubts like everyone else. And the main message of the song is pretty much that nobody's as perfect as they might seem on the surface. One of the most vulnerable, introspective songs she's released, and I think it's definitely one of her most relatable songs to me. And one theory I have about Homecoming Queen is that it's actually about her returning to her hometown and feeling this pressure from the expectations people she grew up with or just that are in her hometown that know about her becoming famous. Those like expectations they have of her. That there's a different song on the album called Half of My Hometown, which talks about her leaving her hometown after high school, even though like she's like very much grown up from like the person she was in high school, that there's a part of her that will always feel some connection to her hometown. And in the last line, the last chorus of the song, there's a line where she talks about how she's always wanted to make people in her hometown proud. So it makes sense to me that she would feel some pressure with going back to her hometown and being famous and having all these people have like this image of her being like this perfect singer, artist. And deep down she feels this immense amount of pressure to live up to those expectations, when at the end of the day, she's human like everybody else. That I kind of agree that in a lot of small hometowns, there's kind of this image of everybody who leaves after high school and doesn't just stay in like the hometown and go to like the college nearby, that they're have like this perfect life, or they went after this perfect life outside of the hometown. But at the end of the day, like, everybody's just human. Just to go back to the overall arcing message of the song, the first verse paints this picture of this girl who just always puts on like a brave smile, brave face, even when people are mean to her or are judging her. And at the end of the day, it's about coming to terms that that's not a realistic way of living. And it's important to not get caught up in the perfectionism that most people face, and just allow yourself to be transparent and feel whatever you need to feel, and not feel like you have to be this perfect godly image that's unattainable. And my favorite lyric from the song is from the bridge, that there's a line that goes like, "Does it get hard to have to play the part? Nobody's feeling sorry for you." That it really emphasizes this belief that some people have of someone who's really beautiful or on the surface seems to have their life put together, that, oh, you don't suffer like everyone else. You're perfect enough already. Why should people feel bad for you? You have this, this, and this. But at the end of the day, like, no matter how beautiful someone is or how rich they are, everybody has emotions, and anyone can develop or have to deal with anxiety in some way or another. Another one of the standout tracks on this album for me is Love Me Like a Girl. That's this very soft and delicate ballad that I feel like Kelsea has at least one ballad on each of her albums that is like this, at least with the production, that has this very nostalgic quality. That I think one of the reasons it resonates like that for me is because I had Kelsea's debut album the first time in my car senior year of high school. I don't know, I think it, like, the production of the song reminds me of that first album a lot. And pretty much in the song, she talks about how she wishes her boyfriend could love her in the same way her friends do. And more specifically, it kind of talks about how girls tend to be more attentive to their friends' emotions, or to other girls' emotions in general. Like, there's like that stereotype of like drunk girls in the bathroom just like having deep conversations when they don't even know each other. Or men, I feel like, definitely tend to be more rough on the surface. That I felt it was a really interesting way of saying that. Like, I just wish you could love me like a girl. Yeah, I love it. It's cute. And one of my favorite songs sonically is Needy. That is just this very breezy, light pop country song. Although it's definitely like a bit more country than like the standard like up-tempo song from Kelsea. But it's the love song of the album. It pretty much talks about this idea, or these two people who were very independent, but now they very much rely on each other since they've been in this relationship. And that kind of that transition from both of them like being used to just taking care of themselves and having alone time. That in the first verse, she even talks about how she used to like to spend her Friday nights alone without a reason to check her phone. Now that she's fallen in love with this person, she's like changed how independent she is. Although like not where she's like completely given up on herself, but just like kind of that transition to being more in union with someone else. So another album I've been listening to a lot this month is Ocean by Lady Antebellum. I thought I would like this album a lot more than Kelsea's, but since Kelsey's is more upbeat and light, I think that resonated more with me, just where I am in life right now, where this one's like, it's really beautiful, but it's a lot more salad. It's a lot more sad ballads than the Kelsea record. However, I think the lyrics overall are really beautiful, and it really goes back to that heartfelt ballad period of theirs during the Need You Now era. So it's definitely more country than their last album, which I believe was Heartbreak. So it's definitely a lot more country than their last album, which I believe was Heartbreak, which definitely had like more of a pop country sound than I was used to from them. So it was nice hearing them go back to that country heartfelt ballad style of theirs, which they're very much known for. And I think some of their best songs are very much in that style. Although I definitely liked Heartbreak, but just like in a different way. Like, I feel like this is the sound that makes them more unique, where that pop country sound they had on Heartbreak, I think a lot of other artists already emulate. So my favorite thing that I'm gonna talk about in this video for the month of March is the Amy documentary on Netflix that I talked about, Amy Winehouse and Love is a Losing Game, in last month's video. So this month I thought I'd finally check out the documentary that came out about her life a few years ago, that someone recommended it to me recently. And a good chunk of the documentary is home videos overlapped with interviews of people in her life, like I believe her manager, her ex-boyfriend, and just some other influential people or people who were close to her. I took a lot of notes on it for you guys. But one of my favorite aspects about this documentary is how it talks a lot about not just her music and just her as a musician in general, but also her songwriting. They definitely touched upon how detailed her lyrics are and how poetic they are for a contemporary artist like her. I really love that they went in on that, because that's something I talked about with Love is a Losing Game in last month's video, and how it made you feel like you knew her, but at the same time, you didn't know like the specifics of her life, but rather like the energy or the emotions that she felt through the things that she went through throughout her life and the things that inspired her songs. And also there's a part of the movie, I forget who it was, but there was a friend of hers that said something like how Amy could make you feel special one minute and then the next minute like she's completely forgotten about you. So again, that talks about like this theme not only in her music but with her, where she very much gives herself through her music, but at the same time there's a part of her that's not completely there, that's very much distant, which I've always loved about her music. That there's a section of the documentary that really shows how live performing, and specifically performing in jazz clubs, was very important to Amy. And it was really cool seeing that, because she just, in this footage, she just seemed like any other girl performing at like some local live club. So it definitely made her like very relatable. And like I grew up with her music and I loved her songs and her jazzy style, but I never, as a child, I didn't realize like how much of a live performer she was versus just being a singer and an artist. That the creation of her music was something that was very central to her craft, which was really beautiful to see. That this part of her, or this side of her that was shown in the documentary, made her seem very humble and like just very in tune with her music and her musicianship. That she's really described as this old soul who like knew so much about jazz music. I think they talk about how in Back to Black it strays away from jazz a little bit, because something that I like that she talked about is that there's some jazz musicians who are very like picky with like, oh, what is jazz and what's not. So I thought it was cool how she like on Back to Black, she just made it more her sound rather than just like what people expected jazz music to sound like. Also, there's this interview with the man who hired her. I'm guessing it was an A&R representative, but I'm not like 100% sure. He recognized that she didn't have the most radio-friendly songs, but that there was a lot of soul like within those songs and the poetic nature of her lyrics. I think that's something that can inspire a lot of artists out there for sure. And one of my favorite quotes from the documentary is from Amy, that there's a part where they're like talking to her about charts, and she just talks about how like her main passion is just to like focus on making good music. That she says, "Success to me is having the freedom to work with whoever I want to work with." So like that really emphasizes how much more of a musician she was than like a celebrity or a famous singer. They even mention in the movie like nobody can like completely predict how they'll react to fame. And obviously that was something that like, you know, affected her in a very negative way. That was pretty much like what threw her off the deep end. Well, that and like some other stuff, but that was how she felt about fame, and like her desire to just be a normal person was a big part of all that, for sure. Another important section of the movie is the one that's focused on mental health. That it talks about how her parents split up when she was younger and how this really affected a lot of her relationships. And I thought it was interesting that she admitted that that line in rehab about not going to rehab because her daddy think it's fine. I always thought like daddy was used as like you know, like how some people refer to their significant other. But it turns out that her team was putting together a plan to send her to rehab after she went through a really bad breakup, and she just really needed to get help. And then her father had told her, "Oh, you're fine." Like, what? And pretty much that was like a big reason why she didn't get the help at the time that she really needed. It's really mentioned in the documentary that this could have like pretty much saved her life had her father not said that. So I thought that was really sad how not only she had very toxic relationships in the romantic department, but like her father wasn't, or at least from the documentary's point of view, he wasn't the most, like, he was supportive of like her career, but like I think he could have, like when it came to like her drug use, mental health, been more responsible. That it seemed that Amy herself, she kind of tended to worship these men that didn't really have that much respect for her, that their dad like she didn't seem to acknowledge that the dad wasn't as caring as he should be, because she would listen to like whatever he said. And then with the boyfriend, that really like was the one who like spiraled her into like a lot of her drug use, that it was almost as if she wanted nothing more like besides her music than to make him happy. Like she put so much emphasis on his needs and desires that it showed that like she didn't completely love herself, and that she didn't have a lot of self-love for herself because of all the trauma she went through with her parents' divorce, which is really sad. It's very real and very raw and sad, but I think it's definitely important for anybody who wants to be an artist to see like what not just the price of fame, but how important it is to take care of that side of yourself when going through those things. Okay, thank you everybody for watching today. That I believe today's video was a bit shorter than last month's. I know that one was like almost like 30 minutes long. But yeah, I'm grateful to have any of you or all of you watching me on here on the YouTube. And then you can check out all my other social links to keep up with me. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.